First at 9 this Monday, the 10th of February 2025. Power interruptions. Island-wide blackouts today and tomorrow as CEB scrambles to balance the grid after the Norotchole power plant goes offline. Independent prosecutor. Justice Ministry looks to establish an independent prosecutor's office. Expert committee to be appointed to tackle legal and structural challenges. Crackdown on black money. Sri Lanka launches high-powered task force to fight financial crimes with top ministers leading the charge. Election showdown. Speaker to announce the Supreme Court's decision on petitions against the local authorities elections bill this Friday.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lanka Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwasi Dinu Sensorain, then Lagamati Pharmacy in Labagata Hacker.
Kanta Parisankaragato? Happy Parisan!
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasafe, Vesat Mat doing together at Disney.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. In your top story tonight, Sri Lanka will experience island-wide 1.5-hour power outages today and tomorrow as the Ceylon Electricity Board attempts to manage the electricity supply system, while the Norotchole coal power plant remains disconnected from the national grid following yesterday's 6-hour-long blackout. The power interruptions will take place between 3:30 and 10 p.m. both today and tomorrow under 4 categories. The island-wide power outage occurred around 11:15 a.m. last morning due to a failure in the Panadura grid substation and resulted in a nearly 6-hour-long blackout. Following the sudden power failure, an immediate investigation was conducted and Minister of Energy Kumara Jayakodi claimed that the outage was caused by a monkey coming into contact with the transmission system at the Panadura grid substation. Although the Ceylon Electricity Board took steps to restore power by last evening, subsequent power failures were reported from several areas due to failures in the generators at the Norotchole coal power plant, which resulted in a loss of 900 megawatts to the national grid. All 3 generators of the plant are currently out of service, and it is reported that repairs may take up to 4 days. With Norotchole inactive, Sri Lanka's remaining power plants are unable to supply the country's daily electricity requirement of 2,650 megawatts. Against this backdrop, authorities convened this morning to decide whether power cuts will be required to be imposed to manage the electricity supply system. Accordingly, the CEB decided to impose island-wide 1.5-hour power cuts today and tomorrow, and the proposal received approval from the Public Utilities Commission. The power interruptions will occur under 4 categories between 3:30 and 10 p.m. Accordingly, locations belonging to the A, B, C and D zones will experience 1.5-hour power interruptions between 3:30 and 5:30 p.m. Meanwhile, areas within the E, F, G, H, U and V zones will experience 1.5-hour power interruptions between 5 and 7 p.m. Similarly, 1.5-hour power cuts will occur between 6:30 and 8:30 p.m. for the I, J, K, L, P and Q zones, and between 8 and 10 p.m. for the R, S, T and W zones. Detailed information on the areas belonging to the various zones is available on the www.aderana.lk website. Meanwhile, Energy Minister Kumara Jayakodi yesterday issued a statement regarding the power outage, claiming that the short-sighted actions of previous governments, which failed to prioritise the stability of the national power grid, along with poor guidance and a lack of proper understanding of technology, led to the situation.
Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
Chandurusube Kagin Manape Siga TV Sadha Supiri deal.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Responsibility to look after our health.
The best nutritional supplement for diabetic patients with no added sugar. Maliban Vitagen. Stay healthy for a good reason.
Now, former MP Vimal Veeravansa says that the United States suspended funding for USAID for the same reasons which he exposed in the past. Meanwhile, former MP Udega Mampila claims that despite accusing him of disrupting investigations into the Easter Sunday attacks, spokesperson of the Colombo Archdiocese, Father Cyril Garbani, is the person who is truly disrupting the investigations. In the meantime, many politicians commented on the power outage.
The new minister, following his government's methodology, blames the power outage on the previous government's short-sighted decisions regarding this industry. We would like to ask the Minister of Energy what the short-sighted decisions made by the previous governments are. If the cause of the power outage was a monkey, for the past 2 months the minister has known that the national electricity supply was at such a weak standard. What actions did the minister take in this regard? What actions did the minister take when he was informed that there was a noticeable unbalance and hazardousness in the system for 8 consecutive days? What were the solutions given by the ministry? Accusing previous governments for every single issue is not the correct course of action for a government.
දැන් මේ එක පැත්තකින් වඳුරෙක් කියලා කියලා ඒ ස්ථානයේ බාරව ඉන්න ආරක්ෂක නිලධාරී කියනවා නෑ වඳුරෙක් ආවේ නෑ කියලා. දැන් අපි දන්නේ මොන වඳුරද ඇත්ත කියන්නේ අද උපම් මිනිස්සු වගේ නිකන් කතා කරන්නේ.
Some people are looking at this with an island mentality. They are the creators of these issues. We will provide solutions for these issues under our government. We are in the wrong if we keep blaming others without trying to solve it. As long as we solve it, there won't be a problem.
විසඳනවා නම් ගැටලුවක් නෑනේ.
මම දන්නේ ඇමතිවරයා මේ වගේ Tamanට වගකීමක් නැති කතා කරන එක ගැන අපි කනගාටු වෙනවා. හරි විදියට නම් පිටරටක නම් ඇමතිවරයා ඉල්ලාස් වෙන්න ඕනේ.
ඒ මොහොතේ මොකක් හරි තියෙනවා නම් ඒක අල්ලගෙන කෑ ගහනවා. තීරුමක් නෑ. ඉතින් මේ සියල්ල කළමනාකරණය කරගෙන අපි වැඩ කරනකොට දැන් ඒගොල්ලන්ට මොකක්වත් වෙන කියන්න දෙයක්වත් නෑ. ඉතින් ඔය කාලේ පොඩි පොඩි දේවල් කිය ඉඳි.
Meanwhile, former MPs Vimal Veeravansa commented on the United States decision to hold USAID funds.
ඉතිහාසයේ දෛවයේ සරදම කියන්නේ අපි එදා කියපු දේ
US President Donald Trump and Elon Musk are exposing these same facts only more in depth than we previously uncovered. According to the information disclosed by Elon Musk, USAID has disbursed $7.9 million to Sri Lanka. That amounts to roughly 2.4 billion rupees. The money has been expended to teach gender-neutral terms to Sri Lankan journalists. That means they were taught not to address a gathering as ladies and gentlemen. They were taught not to differentiate between males and females while speaking and scripting. And they have also been taught to encourage gender transitions. None of the Sri Lankan political parties have promoted the LGBTQ ideology. Not even Ranil Wickremesinghe's UNP encouraged it publicly. But one Sri Lankan political party has promoted it openly. That was the Socialist Youth Organisation of the JVP. Meanwhile, former parliamentarian Udega Mampila commented on the investigations into the Easter Sunday terror attack. We asked 8 questions from the government spokesperson during the last press conference. We thought that Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa was the government spokesperson. Apparently, Father Cyril Garbani is the spokesperson for the government now. Father Cyril Garbani called a press conference and strongly criticized me in order to protect the government. Father Cyril Garbani is the one who is disrupting the investigations, not me. President Anura Dissanayake departed Sri Lanka this morning for a 3-day visit to the United Arab Emirates, marking his 3rd official state visit abroad. The president embarked on his inaugural visit to the UAE at the invitation of the President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. During the visit, President Dissanayake is expected to meet the UAE President and hold bilateral discussions on areas of mutual interest. President Dissanayake will also meet the Vice President and Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. In addition, the Sri Lankan President will address the World Government Summit 2025 in Dubai, where he is also expected to hold bilateral meetings with heads of states and governments from several countries attending the summit. Meanwhile, in a bid to attract investments, the President will engage in discussions with top executives from leading global corporations in sectors such as information technology, artificial intelligence, energy, tourism, finance and media. President Disanayake's 3-day state visit to the United Arab Emirates will conclude on the 13th of February.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
ඩයබටිසෝල් සීනිවලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
ප්‍රයිම් ගෲප් ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන ලෑන්ඩ් ලීසින් ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නෑ.
කිසිගින්නක් නෑ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. W.A. Vijayawardene, is of the view that government is constrained by its agreement with the International Monetary Fund and the benchmarks set by the Economic Transformation Act, making it challenging to achieve the targeted revenue of 15.1% of GDP this year. He believes that the government should introduce new taxes to achieve the revenue target set for the year.
The government of President Anurakumara Disanayake has been constrained in its budgetary policy formulation by two factors which have been beyond his control. One is the loan agreement that had been signed by the previous government with the International Monetary Fund, which President Anurakumara Disanayake has agreed to implement without any amendment. The second one is the Economic Transformation Act that had been passed by Parliament just before the presidential election, wherein there had been a number of benchmarks which the government has to fulfill in terms of the law when it prepares its budget for 2025. One of the requirements under the IMF as well as Economic Transformation Act is that Sri Lanka should attain a revenue of the government amounting to 15.1% of its GDP for 2025, which comes to about 5.5 trillion Sri Lanka rupees. Now this is a massive target for the government, so without having new taxes introduced on the people, there is no possibility for the government to reach this level. If the government is unable to reach this level, the fourth tranche of the International Monetary Fund will not be delivered to Sri Lanka. It will also be non-complying with the requirements of the Economic Transformation Act. In addition to that, there had been certain contentious taxes that had been proposed by the previous government to IMF. One is the property tax. Now this tax has been abandoned by the present government, and as a result it will have to introduce a new tax to raise the same revenue because there's a revenue loss. Because of these reasons, the budget cannot deliver so much of promises to the people because it has to confine its budgetary policy within the IMF as well as the prescribed limits of the Economic Transformation Act.
With the third mutual evaluation of Sri Lanka's anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism framework scheduled for next year, the task force appointed to ensure the country's efforts to combat money laundering and the financing of terrorism has been reconstituted with high-level ministerial representation. The task force, chaired by retired Supreme Court Justice Buwaneka Aluvihare, requested the full cooperation and coordinated assistance of all stakeholder institutions to successfully face the crucial assessment.
The third mutual evaluation of Sri Lanka's anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism framework, coordinated by the Asia-Pacific Group on Money Laundering, is scheduled to commence in March 2026. Accordingly, Sri Lanka must ensure compliance with the 40 recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force and demonstrate their effective implementation through 11 immediate outcomes. The actions recommended by the group include focusing on effectiveness, enhanced monitoring, timely legislation, resource allocation and interagency coordination. Stakeholder institutions have been informed of the action plans which have been approved by the Cabinet of Ministers, outlining the actions to rectify the remaining gaps in the AML-CFT framework. An AML-CFT task force was initially established in 2023 with the concurrence of the Cabinet of Ministers to monitor and follow up on the implementation of the institution-wise action plans. The relevant task force has now been reconstituted with high-level ministerial representation under the direction of the President, ensuring the government's support for this process and in alignment with its efforts to fight corruption in Sri Lanka. The high-level AML-CFT task force, chaired by retired Supreme Court Justice Buwaneka Aluvihare, comprises Minister of Justice Harshana Nanayakara, Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha Fernando, Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma, Senior Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka Nelumani Daulgala, and Additional Director General of the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development AKDDD Arandara. During the inaugural meeting of the AML-CFT Security Task Force held on the 29th of January 2025, Chairman of the force, retired Supreme Court Justice Buwaneka Aluvihare, and the members of the task force highlighted the strategic importance of the mutual evaluation. The members of the task force also requested the full cooperation and coordinated assistance of each stakeholder institution to successfully face the crucial assessment. The Sri Lankan government, in partnership with the United Nations in Sri Lanka today, launched the One Registry program to strengthen the country's civil registration and vital statistics system. Speaking at the event, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya emphasised that Sri Lanka's digital transformation must be inclusive and serve all communities, especially marginalised and vulnerable groups. The Sri Lankan government and the United Nations in Sri Lanka today launched the Transforming Local Administrative Data Collection Systems for Sustainable Development Goal Acceleration joint program, marking a significant step towards strengthening the country's civil registration and vital statistics system. This initiative, named One Registry, implemented by the United Nations Development Programme and the World Health Organization in Sri Lanka and supported via the UN Sri Lanka SDG Fund, aligns with the government's broader digital transformation agenda and strategy, aiming to ensure equitable access to quality public services for all citizens.
To effectively transform public services, we must ensure that every corner of Sri Lanka has access to reliable, high-speed internet. This is essential for equitable digital service delivery and preventing exclusion from the digital revolution. As we strive to digitize and modernize public services, we are often encumbered by legacy systems that were never designed to meet the needs of a digital-first society. To address this, we must invest in modernizing public service systems that ensure that they are interoperable, scalable, and sustainable over time. As we drive forward this digital innovation, we must ensure that we balance progress with the protection of citizens' data and privacy. This remains one of the most pressing contradictions of our digital transformation journey. I am, however, really encouraged by Sri Lanka's steps to strengthen its personal data protection laws, ensuring that privacy and security concerns are addressed alongside technological advancement. But these laws and the institutions created as a result must be functional and effective. This is not the case yet.
The cornerstone of the government of Sri Lanka's vision for its people, for an inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous digital future. This means setting the required conditions by ensuring that everybody has the necessary skills, capacities, and access. This way, we can ensure that no one is left behind and that everyone across this beautiful island nation can reap the benefits of our increasingly digital society. Sri Lanka is one of the first movers among the leading countries on DPI through the reimagination and people-centric approach of the One Registry project implemented by the government with technical support from UNDP and the World Health Organization through the UN's SDG Fund. The project will enhance access, transparency, and efficiency in public service delivery by modernizing the country's civil registration systems, ensuring seamless interoperability with other digital services, and by adopting universal safeguards.
Efforts to decentralize registration officers have already contributed to improved accessibility, especially in remote and underserved areas. The Registrar General's Department has already made strides with the development of a digital e-population registry, with data entry occurring at the divisional secretariat level. This approach must ensure that we are able to securely handle large volumes of data and that the digitalization process is inclusive, serving all communities equitably, especially the marginalized and vulnerable groups in our society. We all know too well that while we tend to speak of technology as having a transformative potential, we cannot lose sight of the fact that access to digital technology is not equal. This initiative will therefore require sustained investment, not only in infrastructure, but also in capacity building and outreach programs that ensure universal access to registration services. This transformation doesn't mean that their lives become more insecure or that their privacy compromised in any way. The first phase of this initiative will be tested in selected divisions covering urban, rural, and estate sectors with the goal of improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the registration process.
The Committee on Parliamentary Business has decided to convene a special sitting of Parliament this Friday, the 14th of February, during which the Speaker is expected to inform Parliament of the Supreme Court's determination on the petitions filed against the Local Authorities Elections Special Provisions Bill. The relevant Ministerial Consultative Committee will also meet on the same day to consider the bill. Leader of the House, Minister Bimal Ratnayaka, emphasised the necessity of holding the local authorities elections without further delay in compliance with the Supreme Court's directive to conduct the elections promptly. As per the decision, the second reading debate on the Local Authorities Elections Special Provisions Bill will take place next Monday, the 17th of February, from 2 to 7 p.m. The opposition has agreed to submit proposed amendments to the bill by the 17th. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Justice and National Integration has decided to establish an independent prosecutor's office as outlined in the government's policy statement. The Justice Ministry in a statement announced that an expert committee will be appointed to address key issues related to the creation of the office. The committee will comprise the Attorney General or two of his appointed representatives, the Secretary to the Ministry of Justice, a senior judge with expertise in the judicial service, and the President of the Sri Lanka Bar Association or a designated representative. The primary responsibility of this committee will be to develop initial proposals for the establishment of the Independent Prosecutor's Office. Once a draft concept paper is prepared, the Ministry of Justice plans to seek feedback from the public and civil organisations. Founder of the Derana Media Network, MP Dilith Jayavira, claims that the technological developments should not surpass the civility and culture of a country. He made these remarks at an entrepreneurship forum held in Colombo today. An entrepreneurship forum organised by SLTC Research University's Faculty of Business Management was held today in Colombo. During the forum, a discussion took place on topics centred around entrepreneurship with the participation of a group of entrepreneurs, including founder of the Derana Media Network, parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira.
When it comes to challenges, if I did not resign from the Sri Lanka Customs 3 years ago, I would have been appointed the Director General. When it comes to risk, Dilith Jayavira entered politics and it has put his life at risk. He has also resigned from the chairmanship of around 53 companies. What I see in this is that we must seize the opportunity. The other is that if we take reasonable and justifiable risk, it is the secret to success.
The companies or countries which are creatively involved in entrepreneurship need an organizational culture. All of us must embark on a journey towards the same dream, and that dream must be something that fulfills our ambitions and inspires us. If we consider this country as an institute, what we lack is a shared dream and an organizational culture. We tend to chase after negativity. We must keep in mind that Donald Trump has restored the United States back to its civility and culture of white Christianity, and that is why he says that there are only men and women in his country. The technological world carried the idea that a person can transition into the opposite gender within a few hours. However, Trump stated that this is false and highlighted that there are only two genders in the United States. We must understand that even while India moves ahead with its technological revolution, Narendra Modi still pushes the country's civility forward, which is known as "Our India is the greatest." I am saying that you must use technology to establish yourself as an expert. For business news, join us after this short commercial break. Welcome back. In business news today, Sri Lankan budget airline Fitzair announced the expansion of its Colombo-Dhaka service with the addition of 2 new weekly flights. The airline previously operated 3 flights a week, and the enhanced schedule will now offer 5 weekly flights. The additional flights will operate from the 15th of February to the 29th of March, with departures on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays and Sundays. Meanwhile, speaking further in this regard, Executive Director of Fitzair, Amar Qasim, stated that plans are underway to raise the frequency to 6 flights per week during the upcoming summer season.
Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's Sigiriya has been crowned the world's most welcoming city for 2025 by the online travel agency Booking.com. As part of the 13th edition of the Traveller Review Awards, Booking.com unveiled the 10 most welcoming cities for 2025, backed by over 360 million verified customer reviews. Accordingly, Sigiriya is ranked first in the list, which also includes Cazorla in Spain and Urubici in Brazil, among others. Booking.com says the iconic Sigiriya Rock Fortress, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, offers breathtaking views and highlights the architectural brilliance of ancient Sri Lanka. It also highlights Sri Lanka's renowned batiks, ornamental pots and handloom textiles. The travel agency also recommends safaris at the Minneria National Park to witness firsthand spectacular gatherings of wild elephants. The Colombo Bourse witnessed a notable downturn during the beginning of the trading week, with both major indices experiencing sharp declines. The all-share price index dropped by 168.41 points, settling at 16,566.27 points, while the S&P SL20 index declined by 32.69 points to 4,959.45 points. Market turnover was recorded at 2 billion rupees. Meanwhile, the banking sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, followed by the capital goods sector. Foreign participation remained subdued, with foreign purchases at just 74 million rupees, while foreign sales totaled 109 million. Research analyst of Capital Alliance, Imdad Dean, joins us now with a few thoughts to round off our Markets in View segment for the week.
The domestic stock market fell throughout the previous week. The S&P SL20 dropped 2.4% from 5,114 to 4,992, while the ASPI fell 2.3% from 17,122 to 16,734. In addition to these indices' performance, market turnover decreased by 50% from 33.2 billion to 16.6 billion rupees, attributed mostly to contributions from the capital goods and food, beverage and tobacco sectors. Furthermore, the government generated 180 billion rupees last week through treasury bill auctions, which saw interest rates on 3, 6 and 12-month bills fall by 14, 9 and 4 basis points respectively. Internationally, the major US market indices fell throughout the previous week, with the Dow Jones, S&P 500 and Nasdaq falling by 50, 20 and 50 basis points respectively, following US tariff threats and poor US job market data.
And with that, here's a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. And that's all for tonight. Thank you for joining and have a good night.